Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of my new podcast. Today with me is Leila Lee, CEO and co-founder of Kosa AI. And welcome, Leila. I hope you're doing good this morning.
Yeah, it's all good. Thanks for having me here. And hi, everyone.
Happy to have you. I will just introduce you a little bit. I was quite reading through your LinkedIn profile and a little bit about you, so it's quite interesting. You actually have a degree from Boston University, from Harvard, and a degree in fashion design, which is already quite interesting. You speak 4 languages. You were before working for Tesla, Philips, and Vodafone as a data scientist, which is, I think, quite impressive. And you were living in several places all over the world and working and living there. So I would say you're quite got around so far. And I just wanted to start to know a little bit about you, also about Kosa AI, what you're doing exactly there, and how you got the idea for it, basically.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for the nice introduction. So I'm originally from China and I moved to the US when I was about 18 and did all of my studies there. As you probably saw, I was a bit of all over the place. I studied communication and also psychology, and I did a semester in Japan where I also speak Japanese. That's how where I learned it from. And after that, I did, a degree also in fashion design. And that's somehow I got into computer science. That's how I got my master from Harvard in computer science. And after that, I think my professional life has always been in tech, working for different companies. And as you said before, Philips, Vodafone. And at Tesla, I was there for about 3 years before I decided I kind of want to do something for myself. And I did a incubator. I went through an incubator called Antler. And I actually did that in the Nairobi cohort. That's where I met my co-founder. And I think when you're in a developing country, so to say, it can be your changes a bit, right? Like if you're a tech person and you're talking with other tech people from Silicon Valley, and your focus is really on, oh, how can we build the coolest and the most cutting edge tech out there? But I think when I travel to other places and when I'm around people that have a little bit of a different focus, then also it kind of changes what you want to focus on as well. So I think that's where the whole idea of like tech inclusion, how can we make sure technology just doesn't just benefit a couple people, but like everyone comes from. And I think that's sort of the foundation of where the idea of Kosa came from. So what we do in a nutshell is that we build software solutions that detects and corrects bias within the machine learning process. So you probably have heard before that facial recognition softwares that doesn't really recognize Black people's faces or tag them as chimpanzees or primates or, you know, and there's resume screening tools out there that for engineering positions, they just actively discriminate against women. So I think that's what we do as a software solution is to find those biases and try to correct them or mitigate them and provide company with a solution, a platform, so they can build more inclusive technologies. So yeah, that's sort of what we do. And right now we're about a team of 7, 8 people. And since we're a company born out of the pandemic, everyone is remote. And I think that's one aspect that's a little bit like fortunate, I guess, for us is, now we get to have a very global and very diverse team and everybody can work from their home country. We also give people the opportunity to work from an office if they want to work from a co-working space, but we don't actually have a physical office right now. So it's kind of interesting that we have team members in Ethiopia, also in Europe and Kenya and in Asia, like in Korea and in the US as well. So everyone is sort of sitting everywhere. Working in this type of company can be quite fun. I guess we're still small, so it's manageable. We're gonna see how this is gonna work out when we expand.
I mean, this is, I think, also one of the major things I actually wanted to talk with you about, because I think this is quite unique point about your company. I mean, your co-founder Sonali, she lives in Nairobi, right, in Kenya. So I mean, already as co-founders, you're quite far apart because you're located in Amsterdam, right? That's correct.
Yeah, so I kind of go back and forth between Nairobi and Amsterdam,
Okay.
even though, yeah, we're a Dutch company and our market
Mhm.
focus is in Europe as of now. But we do have like partnerships on the African continent as well, and we're sort of working from multiple continents. But yeah, my co-founder, she's Kenyan and she's based in Nairobi. She's actually right now on maternity leave, so it's quite an interesting period of time for us. There's a lot
Yeah.
of stuff happening.
I can imagine that this is quite challenging if you're like if you're in the process of growing your business and then one of the co-founders has to step back to care about child, which is of course super important. But I
Mhm.
mean that leaves of course stress on the other co-founders. I can imagine.
Yeah, I think it's always the co-founder relationship. Sometimes it's not just about the work that other people share. It's also about like bouncing off ideas off of each other, right? Like when you have something in your mind and you don't know, and because you started a business together, you can always talk to the other person. So I think she's still there in that regard. But work-wise, I think we can handle the workload for a couple of months, and you know it's very important whether you're a new mom or a new dad, you get the time off to actually spend with your family.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think when we started the company, we had some honest conversations with each other, like what we're not willing to sacrifice for the company. I think that's very important because I think as entrepreneurs, we're all very driven and you can sacrifice a lot. Like, say, you're working for a big company, now you're taking a pay cut and then working even more hours and doing more work to start your own company. So like that sacrifice we're willing to put up, but there's also sacrifices we have to say, oh yeah, well, you know, my family and my relationship, that's really important. My mental health, that's really important. And I think we want to do that for all of our employees as well, to say, well, you know, we don't really want anyone working on the weekend. You know, if that's not necessary, because mental health is very important, your health is very important. You know, just go do what you have to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite. I think it's quite easy to overdo because I mean, when you're working for others, you know, usually you know what is expected of you, and you just
Yeah.
fulfill what is expected, and then you know you're done. When you start something, I mean, there's nobody
Yeah.
expecting anything from you despite yourself. So, oh,
Yeah. I actually had that conversation with my co-founder as well, where she was the one who told me, she's like, stop sending people email in the middle of the night. I know you like to work at night, but just stop it. Like, you know, just chill out. It's fine. It's
yeah.
fine. Take a break.
I think this is, yeah, it's sometimes hard to understand because you know like you have some points in time when you like to work, and I have, for
Mhm.
example, I have the same with one of my co-founders. He's like an evening guy, so he likes to start like late in the afternoon to work and work all night long. I'm more a morning person, so I prefer to wake up at like 5 o'clock and start my day there. So it's sometimes like a little bit difficult because there's very little overlap between our productive times.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just have to deal with this, right? It's just
Yeah. Well, we realized like also working with team everywhere and everyone has different sort of
Mhm.
habits and you're never really in the same space is that it's really important to get FaceTime together because you can get so disconnected as a team who never really meet, right? So I think for like our tech team, because we're working Scrum, we talk every day. So we have a set time, even though everyone sort of work different hours during those set times, we're going to work together and that's great. All the other team member, like say we have someone who's doing marketing, but she's you know she's the only person that's doing that, then it becomes a bit harder to get connected with the other team. So we try to schedule as much like engagement events or like team days like at least once a month so people can meet face to face. And that overlapping work time, sometimes it's good for productivity and sometimes it's just like people might need some opinions or support or some other work from other people before they can proceed on their own. So you don't want to become like the roadblock for other people. So that's not like during the overlapping work hours, it's not like necessary you have to work. your best. You just have to sort of be there to support other people. And then people can then work in the hours that they work best. Because I know I'm the same. Like I wake up really early and I can work until maybe 1 in the afternoon, then my productivity is over. Then in the afternoon, I can schedule some meeting, I can talk to people where I don't actually have to actively use my brain. But then the productivity kind of kicks in again around 9 p.m. And that's when I can work again and be like, oh yeah, this is great. That's when a lot of those I guess late night emails are coming from, where people get scared, especially I guess our team members who want to go to bed, and then I will still send Slack messages, but they have their notifications off. I guess if you see that little red dot, you'll click open and then see massive messages from me. Then it's not good. I tell them not to check. It was like it's not like I send you messages not expecting you to do it right then, but you know it's fine. I think that's a learning process for everyone, just to get used to it.
But I think what is quite interesting, like what you were talking about before, because I mean we were all, I mean everybody, I most probably also the viewers, a lot of them were in remote work over the last year or so, or maybe 1.5. What is interesting is actually that you seem to deal with actually one of the major problems that at least we found is that, I mean, in meetings, when you do like these online meetings, you talk about like, you know, you have your talking points and you go through your talking points and you resolve these. But in real meetings, there is usually like more, right? You like talk about some things which have maybe not like are very high on the priority list, but you know, you just drink a coffee and you talk about them, or you know, you just have an idea and you just, you know, like do some brainstorming then and there, which in my experience over online, it's kind of difficult. You don't do this really. So how do you deal with that? Like how do you generate that feeling of a real meeting?
Yeah, so I completely get that. It's quite difficult to have you know, like when you have coffee in an office with people, and then probably sometimes people not even from your own team, but like from some other offices because you are in the same building. I think that feeling cannot be replicated. It's just very hard. And that's also why I think for us, we are going to meet, maybe not like every day, but maybe twice a year as a team, but like otherwise, and other things, how we deal with it as a remote team is really having the structures and the outlet for people to do this. To say, so also people communicate in different ways, right? Like say we have some introverts on our team. They prefer to have no meetings at all, but they have some really good ideas. So we need to provide the channels for them to actually get their ideas heard, not just like in meetings where if you ask them point blank, oh, what do you think? Let's do a brainstorm right now. They're probably, oh, they have nothing to say, but like, it's not like they really have nothing to say. So I think to understand everyone's communication style is super important as well. And for people, like say they're more introverted, even if we meet face to face, it's unlikely they're really gonna open up in a really long meeting where they talk about this. And I think also during the pandemic, everyone is having Zoom fatigue, right? Nobody wants to do really long Zoom meetings anymore. And then if you're in those meetings, sometimes people schedule really long team building event for 2 hours where you have to keep your cameras on, and then you have to like have some happy hours with your colleagues. It's not very authentic. So we try not to do that, as like we have to reduce the meetings as much as possible. Like we just don't want to do that. So I think just having proper, like say documentations, like what's really expected. And these are sort of the tasks and the objectives. And when people really understand what we're trying to go for as a team, then the ideas will come, and then they can manage their own time, they can manage their own task, and they take really ownership of the area that they're working on. And usually that's when they also go actively do some extra meetings on their own time and then come to me. Sometimes like I think I would know the area because this is sort of, I'm the CEO, came up with the idea, I'm very active in talking with everyone, but they will still come to me and then tell me something that I don't know and say, oh, have you thought about this? Oh yeah, I came across this article. And that's, I think that came from this sense of the ownership that they have over their work. Then I think that's what we rely on a lot, like when we work remotely, because otherwise, you get into this micromanaging mode where you have to constantly check on everyone, and then you have to have meetings all the time, which we don't want. We just want people to have a lot of ownership and freedom. And that comes from, oh yeah, really knowing, like, we as a company, what are we trying to do? And then what is your part in it? And what do we need to deliver, and when do we need to deliver that? Then if you really understand that, you can work at your own hours, you can work wherever you are. So I also told people, like, it's not necessary that you work normal, quote unquote, office hours, but what's really important is that you take that ownership. So maybe when they first joined, we have this whole checklist of onboarding checklist. I say, oh yeah, one thing you need to do is maybe on Wednesday morning, go do your grocery shopping. And on Thursday afternoon, go watch a movie, like somewhere, go do something that you normally wouldn't do during working hour, just to break the habit of saying, oh, I clocked my hours. I worked from 9 o'clock to like 9 to 5, I clocked my hours, because we don't really want people to clock hours. We want people to deliver on the stuff we're trying to achieve. So then once they have that ownership, we don't actively need to schedule like an open brainstorm hour where everyone sit around and talk about, oh yeah, well, what do you think? Because the channels are implemented where people can actually give their opinions, give their ideas to the team. And if necessary, then we'll always schedule meetings and then talk about it as a team. But we also said, kind of implemented in our checklist or the guideline for the company, that we don't want to have meetings more than 30 minutes. If it's a 30-minute meeting, or like 45-minute meeting, 1 hour meeting, and it involves more than 2 people. If 2 people want to talk for 2 or 3 hours together, it's their business. But if you involve more than 2 people and you put it on the calendar as it's a 1 hour meeting, like we really have to know, like, why are we all doing here? What's everyone's role in this meeting? What is the deliverable? Like everything needs to be really defined. Otherwise, I think, especially working remotely, but also when you don't work remote, you can get into these habits of having a lot of meetings. I remember at bigger companies I worked for, you need to have a alignment meeting to align on how you're going to align with the actual alignment meeting that you're going to have with all the other teams together. And I think that was the moment where I felt a bit suicidal. I was like, oh, why can't we just align? Why do we need to have like pre-alignment meeting and then alignment meeting and then like a follow-up meeting, like 3 different meetings with 3 different groups to really understand what we're doing here? That just shows, I don't know, people don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think this is in general a problem. I mean, you need meetings kind of to align and to discuss things. But on the other hand, I mean, like if you just have meetings and you do nothing else, then you don't do your job, right? That's the other
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
But that means for you, I assume company culture is then super, super, super important, because I mean, like, I guess the people that you have in your company, they have to have like a similar approach to work, at least somewhat. They have to understand your vision then very well, because if you give them the ability to organize their own work, then basically they have to also understand where that leads, right? Like where they want to go with their work. So how do you create that culture, and how do you communicate efficiently your vision, where it goes?
Yeah, so I think that's something that we kind of realized after our, I think, our second hire. We hired someone who like was really good on paper. It seems perfect for our team, and we were all very excited, and we were sort of considering even making this person maybe as a co-founder. But we said, oh yeah, well, before we start with all of this paperwork, let's just try it out. Let's do it for a month. And then they turned out not so great, and then we had to have some really hard conversations. And that's when we realized, like, to have the company culture that we're going for, it really starts from recruiting people. Like, the recruitment has to be done right. Then, like, the work later on is really reinforcing what was going on in that recruitment process. So we kind of worked with like among ourselves first, and then looking for advisors to look at our hiring rubric. So there are a couple criteria that we look at when we're hiring for a new person to join. And it doesn't really matter which department they're in. We just have these 4 kind of pillars that we look at. And we kind of score people on these 4 pillars. And so they have to take ownership of their work, and there's job-related kind of skill set. And we look at whether, their teamwork is good enough. There's a couple criteria that we set under each of these pillars, and whether they're a cultural enhancement or not. And so I think there are different proportions that we also set to each of these pillars. So when we're kind of assessing people for the jobs, then it becomes very obvious by the questions that we ask, by the assessments that we give, which person is going to be a good fit and which person is not. And then after people join, we sort of have an onboarding checklist where they self-onboard, and they also learn about how people work, and they talk to each of the team members as well. And I remember interviewing someone, and at the end of the interview process, I also asked them how do they feel about the company, what they have learned, because everyone in the company has to meet, at least within the team, everyone has to meet the new person that we're interviewing. And that new person said, oh yeah, well, after talking to everyone, I feel like everyone's very driven. Everybody knows what they're doing. And everyone I've spoken to seems very passionate, and just seems like they all have a lot of freedom to do their work. So it seems great. And because we didn't exactly say this is how we're going to evaluate you on, but I think that message really came across to the new hire, like this is the type of company that we are. So I thought, oh yes, jackpot, yes, I did. I did my job. This is what we're looking for. So I think that's good, but it's still a learning process for us. I think not every person you're going to hire is exactly the same, and everyone works differently. And of course, that's what we want as well. In terms of working style, then that's how you get different perspective as well. So sometimes it still can be very challenging in terms of like communication. People just communicate differently. Like I think our team works really good in terms of taking ownership of their own work and then knowing where we're going. But because people communicate differently, then sometimes it gets a bit tricky. But that's the part we're still learning.
Yeah, I think this is also like one additional question I have, or one point that I also realized. It's like we have also, I mean, we're also in IT, right? So we have also the situation that we have a business part, and we have a technological part. And we realize also at some points that sometimes it becomes super difficult, because sometimes you think you're talking about the same thing. So everybody is agreeing on, we had a short while ago a meeting, an online meeting as well. Everybody was agreeing on a thing. And then a week later, I realized that actually the thing that we were agreed on, everybody had like a different view on that. Like, like everybody made it their own interpretation of what we agreed on. And it was like, the business was here and technical side was here. Like, I mean, I think it's not just in the groups of communication, right? It's also between the different teams of communication. How do you solve this? Do you have some kind of structure in place, or you currently just like try to encourage communication between them? How you deal with that?
Yeah, so I think for our structure right now, I'm serving sort of both the CEO and the CTO. So the business and technical translation just all goes through me. So we're not running into that problem yet, but I can see for our tech team, sometimes when I require something to be built, or like we're working on something, and then I have to tell them exactly the business justification of why we're doing this, why this is a priority. And it gets very hard for them to understand from time to time. Yeah. And then the way that they're thinking is always, oh, but technically we can do this. I was like, no, yes, technically we can do that, but that costs a lot and it takes a really long time. But we need a really easy fix right now. So we're going to do this. And then everyone's like, yeah, but, but we can do this. That's going to be really cool. And I was like, yeah, but who's going to use it? Who's going to pay for it at the end of it? No one. It's a really cool piece of tech, but no one's going to do it. So we're not going to do that. And then sometimes it gets a bit hard. But I think going forward, we are going to look for a CTO to be onboarded. And that's when I get really mindful of the type of profiles that I'm looking for in the CTO, because I think for a lot of startup when they get started, right, like you have a business person and then you have a tech person, and then they sort of work together. And then it might be the case that if you're on the business side, you kind of don't really understand like what's going on with all the tech. And then on the tech side, you can have someone who's super solid and have really strong expertise and the technical skills that they possess. But then that's when the communication gap sort of develops over time, when like there's no overlap, I guess, like very little overlap between the tech side and the business side. So I think that's what I realized when looking at some of my friend's company, and then everyone sort of running into this problem, and then they had to replace maybe their CTO. They're saying, oh yeah, my CTO really is like a head of engineering type of a person. Like if we're going to have another CTO, they have to have a certain profile. And then sometimes when I hear some of my business friends, when they say, oh yeah, I really need a technical co-founder, in my mind, I just think, you don't really need a technical co-founder. You need someone to build this app or this website or this whatever product you have in your mind. Like having a technical co-founder is something different, right? So like when you hire a CTO, like what you have in mind versus who is actually going to build this thing. It should be two different type of people. So I think to solve that communication gap, which is in my mind, at least right now, when we do hire a CTO to be in that position, they need to have like stronger business acumen than what I have seen so far, like in the profiles that I've seen so far. So the connection doesn't get lost, because I think what we see a lot with really tech-driven company, product-driven company, that's really heavy on the tech side, that you can over-featurize and you can over-engineer your product to the point that like the customer will look at it and be like, okay, a cool piece of tech, but like, what does this do? Like, how does this solve my problem? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to solve a problem for someone, and what exactly is the problem? And it's not about the solution that you come up with. It's about solving that problem. And it's not like, oh, we have a solution. How do we find a problem that fits this particular solution that we have, right? That sometimes startup run into that problem. So I think it's always good to get everybody aligned. The starting point is always like, what problem are we solving here? Like, why should people care about this problem? What problem are we solving? Who cares right now? And then we build a solution for that person. So if you have that in mind for a lot of the tech team, they will also have a better time of understanding it, instead of giving them all the tech specs and the requirements to say, this is what we built.
Wow, okay, that's I think the perfect ending for our discussion, because that is very, very insightful. I definitely see the same problems in many companies, especially when they come from university, when they're tech that started in the university. I often see that problem. So I completely agree, and I think this is a very good advice for other founders to take this into account, that maybe the generating the right environment and getting the right people with the right mindset and the right skills and abilities together is actually maybe more important than the actual tech skills that you generate.
Yeah, I guess it's all about execution, like together as a team, rather than like the idea in itself, right? Yeah. So yeah, thank you for having me on your new podcast. I hope whoever is listening found something useful here. And if you're starting on an entrepreneur journey, good luck.
Yeah, thanks for being here. It was a real pleasure to have you, and let's hope to have you again soon sometime. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Have a nice day.